Okay, so we need to begin our session. So the second plenary is on community networks and sustainable development goals. Our speakers for this session is Mr. Heon-Jun Kim, the Senior Program Management Expert at the UN Project Office on Governance. And we have Mr. Babu Aryal, Founding Member of the Internet Society in Nepal. And we have Dr. Sarbani Banerjee Belur, the Senior Research and Scientist of Garm Marg Rural Broadband Project in India. And we also have Waqas Hassan, who is the president of the Islamabad chapter of ISOC in Pakistan. And to moderate this discussion is Ms. Duangthip Chomprang, who is the Director of the Office of International Cooperation, International Institute for Trade and Development. So our next session will deliberate on how community networks can play a role in supporting socioeconomic development and the UN SDGs. So let us welcome our speakers, our panelists, and we shall begin.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sparing us at least a few minutes for introduction, which I originally was planning, so thank you. So because of time, although we're allocated 1 hour, we have a dilemma because myself and a few speakers here have other appointments already at 12. So of course, not taking away the importance of this session, we will do our best to basically put across key messages and key points that we in the room here, we're both policymakers and policy implementers, how to go forward. So be as factual, ladies and gentlemen, and as truthful, and also we're here to solve a problem. All right. So first, I just want to put maybe put a bit of context here. Of course, session 1 has done a great job for us. So for us to go in and basically we can go into the details. So as we all know, a few years ago, the United Nations have announced that access to the internet is a right. So I guess the question here is not about whether connectivity and access to the internet is going to address sustainable development goals. It is. This is basically by this fact. Another interesting report that I'd like to, if you have the time to ever read, is the UNESCO Science Report. It's written 2015 to 2030, but it's actually published in 2017. And the key message from that is, and especially here in Asia Pacific, is the need for technology autonomy. And what does that mean? The need for technology autonomy means for us to progress, be it socio or economically, going forward in a way technology enable society or economic systems. We as a nation or as a region need to actually understand technology. We need to know how to work with it, how do we create it, how do we innovate with it, and how do we help each other innovate in order to create new things. So this particular report by the UNESCO is also a very important report. Aside with the developments that, of course, the UN now recognizes that internet access is, we don't need to speak about rights. It is, it's something that we automatically should consider. So with that, we're looking within the context of community internet. So the question here is sustainability. So there are many angles of sustainability. A gentleman from, I think, University of Pennsylvania was talking about why is Asia experiencing perhaps more successes than failures. And I guess some of that is going to be discussed here in this session. Okay, and lastly, I just want to make a point that this is an extremely balanced panel, whoever made the selection of speakers. We have one policymaker, one is a regulator, one is a social scientist, and another person is from a policy perspective. So very, very balanced. So I think we can just dive in on this particular issue. So bear with me, we have to change the questions that we were planning because a lot of that was spilled over from the first session. So here's the thing. We know that community internet is important. The network itself is important. It is not an end in itself. Right? How do we, with your different experiences and perspective, how do we move forward beyond access, beyond connectivity? All right? How do we stop chasing the adoption and growth rate, which we talk about penetration, but really at the end of the day, when we want to achieve Sustainable Development Goals, from your experiences, how do we move forward? So I'll start with the lady at the very end, Dr. Sarbani.
Thank you, Internet Society, for inviting me here to speak on the project that I have been working since the year 2015. Our project has been, it's called Garm. It's the road to the village. And we have been working on this project since the year 2012. Initially, the project actually focused on technology development. We worked on a TV white space testbed connecting 7 villages solely on TV white space in Palghar, Maharashtra. And the project was actually solely on technology development. We slowly moved ahead and we scaled up the project from 7 villages to 25 villages later in the year 2016. And what we find is that, and that's where we started seeding the growth of community networks. The community networks project that we began, it was a part of the 25 village project, was a project in which the community network, we set up the infrastructure over there, enabled the connectivity to flow into these remote villages. These villages were actually not covered at all, so they were completely unconnected. And after that, we handed over the network, the infrastructure to the community to take up from there. But initially, so that was a community sort of led network. And currently, I am with the APC Community Networks Learning Grant. We are seeding the growth of community network in one village that is completely unconnected in the foothills. It has hills on 3 sides. It's called Pathardi. Again, in the village in Maharashtra, in Palghar, Maharashtra. This is a tribal village. So the population size is roughly around 2,000 population size, and the village has no connectivity. So there are towers that are there beside the village, but the towers are non-functional, non-operational. So they get a flicker of mobile signal when they raise up their mobile phones. And sometimes they have to even go up on the hill to make a phone call. So this is the situation over there. So we are seeding the community network over there through the involvement of the community themselves. So the community is currently has been working on agriculture. So we are working together with BIF Development Research Foundation in Pune, in Maharashtra only. And they have been working in this area for the past 20 years, but most of their projects have gone to a dead end because there is completely no connectivity in these areas. So what we are doing is that we are enabling connectivity through the mobile flicker, through the unstable connectivity that is already there, a little part of the mobile signals. We are trying to set up a cellular network router over there, and the community is going to use the connectivity only for e-governance services, enabling the e-governance services. There is no bank. They have to walk 20 kilometers to avail of the banking facilities. There are no ATMs over there. And what we are trying to do is that mobilize this community to work on local knowledge and local languages. That is what we are actually focusing on, wherein the women in the village, in this village, they have a lot of local knowledge, like, for example, seed conservation, on paintings, on craft, on their local songs, music, folk songs, music, stories. So these are the things that we are working on, wherein they are going to put up this in the local intranet infrastructure, and which is an offline center, and work on this for making products which can be sold online. So the part that is online and offline are a little separate, but eventually it's going to be merged into one platform.
So basically, it's not looking at access immediately, but rather to look at what they can be empowered to do, and basically the technology is just an instrument towards that end.
Yes,
it's very, very good. The next gentleman, what is your experience, Babu?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Deep. I'm Babu Aryal from Nepal, and I was one of founder of Society Nepal chapter, and we have been engaged in community networks, community centers, and other inter-governance related issues. My engagement was the first immediately after the 2015 earthquake in this kind of community network issue. There was massive earthquake in Nepal, and some of districts were completely destroyed. More than 80% houses were destroyed, and telecommunication infrastructures were badly affected. And backhaul was there, but access to the internet and mobile telecom was also not there. So with the help of society global, we started Reconnect Nepal initiative in 2015, and that was the time that we realized the importance of internet. Basically, mountain area of Nepal was badly affected, and even rescue police personnel were not able to go to that area because of lack of communication tools, and because of power was not there, communication was not there. So we engaged in that, and we also established some temporary hotspot Wi-Fi area connecting backhaul, which was not badly affected. And later on, we started realizing the importance of this disaster and emergency communication. We had one assessment with the support of LONSA and society itself. We had one research on that, and then we realized the importance of communication, and we started setting up some community centers, and we used traditional operators backhaul and connected the society. One of interesting center was there. Because of earthquake, the whole village was totally destroyed, and people were resettling in new town. There were some around 50-60 house brought in a single area, and we established one community center there. And we gave some sort of infrastructure, as well as we gave some after access thing. Not only connecting is enough. After connection, what is there? So we gave some capacity building programs to them, how to maximize e-governance activities or e-commerce activities. Later on, again with LONSA, we had one research Society Nepal and LONSA had one research on after access. We found that though there were connectivity in mobile segment, more than 80% people had connectivity. Though subscribers are more than 100%, but in meaningful way, it's 80 to 90%. So we again realized that most effective community is person with disabilities. They have, even in health issue, they are disadvantaged. In employment, they are in disadvantage. In many areas that we identified sustainable goal, person with disabilities were most marginalized community who use this opportunity. So we try to build some tools how these people can bring into the mainstream of internet. So now we are trying to build ecosystem. We are trying to build connectivity of after access, and these kind of things, which could be very useful to address sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Babu. I think you've put a very good message out there. Is given that Nepal is very unique because of the earthquake, and it was your stress test, if I could say that, with your network, and it clearly sent a message that was beyond. No, it wasn't about connectivity alone. It's really about how this particular technology can enable people to save lives, resettle, as in the post-earthquake, and more importantly, realizing that the people that are most at risk, like the disabled people and people who are far flung away from the what we call the network itself, how can we build tools around them so that, God forbid, if another disaster happened, that that you're prepared. But it goes beyond that. It's really basically enriching the lives of the people in a way. So that's a good side of the earthquake in a sense, if I can put it. Thank you very much, Babu. So next we have Mr. Waqas.
Thank you, Moderator, and also thank the Internet Society for this opportunity. Of course, we all recognize the importance and relevance of SDGs if we want to have sustainable future. Our project in Pakistan was in a rural village, and it was a two-phase project. In the first phase, of course, providing access to that village was most important because when internet goes somewhere, it of course brings benefits, and of course there are some other parts of the internet as well that that we look into. So we partnered with the local ISP who was providing the backhaul facilities, and that connection was provided to the village. But in addition to the access, we also provided devices. We provided tabs to the villagers and to the prominent people in the village, so that they can start using it, and seeing them use the internet on these devices, others will also be interested to come online and see what they can do. But this project was not restricted just to the access part. We took the next step and we went into the adoption phase. And in that adoption phase, what we did was that there was a girls' high school in that village. We connected that girls' high school and we selected the students from grade 6, and they were provided with remote education facility, online real-time video lectures by teachers sitting in the federal capital, which is Islamabad, which is like 800 kilometers away from that village where this project was being implemented. And we taught them in subjects of English, science, and maths. And we did a pre and a post assessment as well, that how this difference in the delivery of this education and this course material affects their learning and their ability to understand things more conceptually. I think when we got the results back, the post-assessment results, they were amazing. The students, they themselves pointed out that now they want to attend the class. They are more interested, not even interested. In fact, they were more excited to be in the class. Their attendance improved, the learning ability, the learning curve improved, their grades improved as well. And it was all because the education was already there, but the quality of education and the pedagogy that was being followed, that changed drastically for them. And of course, the exposure to internet, the way they can learn, the way they could use their lab, the computer lab. When we went in there for the first time, they had a computer lab, but the desktops over there were actually covered with different things. There was like some cloth over it. They were not using it because they said we don't know how to use it, and what good is there in it for us. But finally, when they actually got learning through this particular model, there was significant delta that we were able to achieve. But what were the basic lessons that we got out of this whole project? The first one was to deploy a community network, and network, it has to be a whole of the government approach. If you go to any part of the country, of course, that is governed by some laws, that is governed by some council, that is governed by some kind of a government entity. For example, our project was more education related, so there was an education office that was overlooking the affairs of the school, and we had to talk to them, we had to collaborate with them, we actually had to get permission from them to deploy this project. And if it was not, if they were not being helpful, this project would not have been possible. So the first takeaway was that, of course, we need the whole of the government approach. The second thing, and the most important thing, is especially because this panel has largely the South Asian representatives, is a culture sensitivity. Once you go into a village, especially in our part of the world, you have to be very cordial. You have to take on a certain approach to make the community understand that what you are bringing to them is of benefit to them. When we went in there for the first time, the villages and the head of that village, they were very apprehensive. They said, we have seen this thing on the TV that, somebody got the internet, and then they started talking to somebody, and then they took off. So we don't want that kind of thing to happen in our village. But then when we sensitized them about what we are actually going to do, they agreed to it. And the best thing was, once this project was completed, there were people from other villages, nearby villages, coming up and saying, when are you going to do this in our village as well? So I think this is one of the things that when we are deploying community networks in this particular region in South Asia, we have to be culture sensitive, and we have to make sure that they understand that this internet is safe and secure for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waqas. I think a whole lot of points here. The most important one being the fact that the whole approach, right, in which the government needs to be supporting the initiatives, and naturally, of course, this is, although it's about technology that we're talking about, but really it's about people. So it's really about how do we customize our approach, and every person, every community is very, very, very unique and different. But the most important thing I think I can see from this is the innovation that comes when a technology is introduced. In the case here where be it the school that you've raised as an example, once they are touched by the internet and what the internet can deliver, which is a different form of education, it changes not just the student, but also the teachers and the education system, which innovates. So it's a source of innovation, which comes from the human interaction and the acceptance of that technology itself, which is something that we don't really talk about. So I think those are really wonderful things. So it's the internet, bringing in the devices, and then how do you use that? That's the more important element of it. Thank you very much, Waqas. And next we have Mr. Heon-Jun Kim.
It's a little bit tricky question for me because I'm working for the international organization as well as with some 20 years of experience as a Korean government employees. Right? Let me rephrase the question because some additional comment to my colleague. We can think about what is the community networks. So I rephrase the terminology as a two-part. One thing is the physical networks, and the other one is the governance networks. So like IT or internet society and so expert in the ICT area, they might be focusing on the physical network, physical connection. Right, from the center to the end, or marginalized area, remote area, or some island. But when we think about the wide penetration of the internet to the end cell or marginalized area, we have to think about consider about not only technology, the contents as well. So the education might be the good contents, and the DRR, the disaster risk reduction, is one of the good contents as well. And also, like the Professor Christopher, you mentioned that, how we're going to increase the income of those communities quite important as well. That is a content to consider how communication might be works in the future. But nowadays, as think about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Most or many of the goals relate to the ICT because ICT is enabler of the achieving the sustainable development. So we cannot separate from the ICT. We cannot separate ICT from the SDG, the sustainable development goals. So that's why the community network might be Waqas for implementing, the SDG itself, and also the other, the part is the governance network, because through using ICT or the community networks, so citizens can participating in the local administration affairs, and also they can participate in the decision-making process of the local as well as the central government. Sometimes in international, the organization's decision-making process can be touched upon the hand of the local community people. And also, they're using the bunch of information from the internets or other websites, the other sources, and then they utilizing those or they educated from those information. They exercise the collective intellectuals on the decision-making process as well. So in terms of the community networks, it's not only the network itself, it also exercise on the governance process or governance, the activities. So in my, the observation about the community networks, so the community is a kind of social innovation. So when we adding up the ICT plus social innovation, we can say that digital social innovations. So people can join the governance process, or so not only people, the multi-stakeholders can join together and then develop the society together. So when we look upon the common differences between the Southeast Asia, Europe, Japan, Korea, and other countries, one thing is interesting. Like the European country, most of the community networks is formulated by the professional communities, or like human rights and some aid organization, some economic activity organization, some education organization. They operate, including the local community as well. So they formulate and operating the networks, and then they ask the citizen itself to participating in, to innovate the society as a whole. And Japanese cases, most of the community network, like Korea, most of the community network is organized or supported by or sponsored by the local autonomies, mainly. I'm not saying 100%. And in America, most of the government, most of the local or the central government supported the community network with the corporate. So this is a little bit, common symptoms of how the community network is operating and formulated. So nowadays, when we think about the SDGs, nowadays the community network is quite essential. So it contributes the local society as well as the national society, and in the long term, international society. So we have to utilize those CNs for achieving SDGs.
I like the word social innovation. So it's more like a platform bringing people together to innovate. Basically, people change, the community changes, so it's a transformation. So I think that message is very clear. And so also, we always think about community development, which is something most development agencies will know, and community development is always reflected where outsiders come in and intervene. But here, when we talk about social innovation, it's a bit more organic in the sense that it's both internal as well as interacting with the external forces that comes in. So I think that's a very rich perspective, and I think that's very important. So now to the digesting what all of the four panelists have said. All right, community internet networks they're small generally, right? They're small, so small is beautiful. It's proven to be a social innovator platform. It's proven that it engages, empowers, especially minority like women and also disabled people. So now we're talking about the word sustainable. Now, I don't know from your experiences working, on the ground, which is the longest community network that you have experienced. And here, I mean, because we're talking about sustainability, right? So generally, there are three ways to actually measure this, either by how long it's been around and continues to stay around and become, continue to benefit everyone. Two, it's also the financial sustainability aspect of it, which is really about monetization and whether community networks can monetize, and how would we look at this? And thirdly, of course, is innovation. If we say this community networks are the basis for innovation, so what sort of innovation model do we think that should evolve? If we say sustainability, it should innovate, it should evolve, right? Or should there be an exit strategy? So maybe it has run its course. And some of us believe, at least in the technical community, that maybe perhaps the community internet network came as a solution because states don't play that role in reaching out to groups that are not underserved. So I know there are a lot of points here, but I guess if you can share with everyone here is how do we define sustainability going forward? Do you see community networks that you have empowered? How would this look like in 2030? I mean, and I guess our message here is we are promoting, we are encouraging community internet networks, right? I'll start with you, Dr. Hassan.
So in our 25 village project that we did address the question of sustainability of connectivity, in which we developed a 4P model, which is the public-private panchayat partnership model, which was focusing on this multi-stakeholder model, which the model has a private entity. That means it can be a telecom operator who wants to connect rural India. But what are the prerequisites or what are the necessary things that the rural India, connecting rural India needs for a private telecom operator? So we also have the government, like, in India we have the BharatNet, which is being, the optical fiber which is being laid in India, and it is reaching out to the village councils or the Gram Panchayats. So that also plays a role in our partnership model. And the third important thing is the Gram Panchayats or the village council. It was observed, I did a study of the various partnership models, and we have seen that the village or the community whom we are going to connect has not been taken into account at all, in the sense that, because that is where the connectivity is most needed. It's usually public-private partnership models or public-public models based on build, operate, transfer or build, transfer, operate. So we got in the panchayat or the village council in the multi-stakeholder model, and this has actually worked a lot, and we have actually validated this model on field and in our villages, 25 villages. We saw that in 5 years, initially in the first year, it will not have a positive return on investment because the model is being run by the local ISP, and the local ISP is not a telecom operator. So he is not able to take that much bandwidth, initially so much bandwidth, and take it to the village in all these villages. But eventually, after 1 year's time, the bandwidth usage increases, in which the local ISP starts to procure more bandwidth and distributes the same to the villagers. So that was the 4P model, which was validated in our 25 villages. And the next thing what we found out is that sustainability cannot be built in until and unless connectivity is linked up to income generation in these villages. And what is important is that what we really tried to identify in our project is that we can't take connectivity and then take digital literacy programs over there, because that again we have a short duration of time for the project to complete itself. So what we try to do is that identify the skills that are already there amongst the community. Like for example, someone has a skill of painting. These are the tribal villages that we are connecting. So they can paint. Some can do some craft work, some indigenous craft work that they are working on. Some are working on paper mache products. So what we try to do is that handhold these artisans over there and try to handle them so that they can come onto a platform wherein they can conserve their local knowledge, because this is their local knowledge. They have their local knowledge, local language, because they don't know English. So local language, their knowledge is conserved in the local language that they have. And the third thing is that they are able to sell these craft paintings and other things online, so that again comes into the sustainability model of the community, that they earn something for themselves, comes back, like especially we are trying to see it amongst women, because might be that the women currently don't own a smartphone because they don't have the means to own a smartphone. So slowly they will start owning a smartphone by themselves. They will start having mobile data to use it in ways that they want to use it, and so the sustainability of connectivity is going to be ensured in the villages. Apart from this, we are also talking to the tribal department. So these villages fall into the tribal department in the boundary of tribal department, and tribal department. We are actually now talking to the tribal department that these art and craft, these skills that the artisans, the local people have, can be taken online into the tribal department's platform. So that so we are getting in the local government, the local village government into the connectivity journey, as well as the tribal department. And the tribal department then convinces the state government, and the state government then goes into the central government. But currently it is only the local government and the tribal department that we are engaging with for sustainability.
That's excellent. I'll wrap up all of you once we hear from all of us, because I need to save time. Okay, so yes, Babu.
In our model, that wherever we deployed our centers with the help of society, it's a remote area, and it's very difficult to even go to that area. In one of our center, which is beyond the net phase 2 site, is it takes more than 1 day traveling by bus from Kathmandu, and we have to walk as well. So in these difficult areas, that we don't have that much commercial activities. In fact, happiness comes with communication. So these centers are basically more for connecting them in mainstream rather than more economic activities. We need to develop a second and third phase for economic modeling. So this whatever we did so far, it was early phase to engage them and bringing them into the mainstream. That was important part. And then at the beginning, we supervised, or we supported for 2 years, and after that 2 years, we developed some local community, and we tried to bring other institutions like nearby school or government agencies or similar kind of responsible units. They have their own organizational setup as well. So bringing more stakeholders in managing, governing that centers was the model that we deployed in our experience.
Thank you, Babu. Waqas?
Okay, so I think sustainability, it is of course linked with what economic gains you get out of that model. But in my opinion, sustainability is also about the persistent use of internet by that community. If that community is using the internet 2 years, 3 years, 4 years that means at least the access and the model was sustainable in its use. Now, if you come to economic sustainability of our project particularly, when we deployed this in the first phase, around 1.5 years back, we started the second phase. When we went there, we saw that there is actually a telehealth center there. And what they're doing is that the doctors from the capital or from other big city, they actually are examining patients and prescribing them medicines and tests over video link. And the women that mostly there were women that were coming in, because the doctor, one was a gynecologist and that one was a medical specialist who were giving the facilities. And they were charging almost 10% of the fee that they were actually charging in their own physical clinics in the big city. So that was, I think, one of the things that we saw, which was a big impact on that community and facilities for that community. So once the community found a solution or an opportunity which was of beneficial to them, the project self-sustained itself in a way that now it's into its 4th year and it's still there. So in my opinion, this is how you can bring sustainability to your project, if you can find particular use cases for the community to use the internet.
That's also a very good example. Next, Kim.
Yes, sustainability. Might be rephrase it again as a profit and the participation. So profit to the all people in the community. So the medical service can be a good example as well. But sometimes the participation means participation of the vulnerable groups, for example, like young and youth and the women and elderly persons. They can participate in the decision-making process of the local or community, and they get some benefit from them. So the need and demand can be reflected to the society, can be a benefit as well. And also, that means, the sound and equal development of the whole society, that can be a good benefit in the long term. So when we think about the sustainability in terms of the economic the perspectives, maybe the profit on the revenue, as Dr. Yu mentioned that, and then the development, economic development or social development of the society can be induce the long-term sustainability of the community networks.
Yes. Okay. So it's my job to kind of put it together, but also I think if I were to put my impression on what our 4 excellent speakers have mentioned, I think there's one word that can put all of this together is really, the aim is really about creating well-being. And how well-being is defined will depend on the community, on the specific government and local government, of course, as a nation. And I think one thing that has been a strong movement right now, because of the SDG 2030, is looking beyond GDP, and is to look at measures and indicators that look at how, for instance, a very good example of the fact that we're talking about community networks is that it's a small, you could say it's a very compact and a holistic, if you like, experiment, which, of course, it's gone beyond experiment, where we can actually see how a community with the interaction of technology has evolved, and a lot of the things that have been raised by our speakers, for instance, the first one, from Dr. Sarbani is looking at the 25 villages and coming up with this model, these four Ps. It's about multi-stakeholder. It's about engaging with everyone, measuring the fact that bandwidth demand is a good indicator of in the long term if the particular community itself, the engagement of the village council here, making sure the local IXP actually survives and is actually thriving, because that's a very consistent measure, as mentioned by Waqas, that the persistent use of the internet is saying that it's a viable technology and it continues to empower the community itself. Of course, it needs to link with income. What's connectivity if not with the power for villages and the community itself to self-define themselves and to be economically independent and sufficient in their own respect. A very important message also was the fact that it's not about covering or trying to attempt to educate through what we call digital skill literacy that we tend to hear in all of the policy papers, but rather being selective of what the skills that can empower them immediately. So a good example of the artisan is very good to show that the evolution of an artisan in an analog world and then starts using the internet, goes and interacts with the digital world where he earns his living. And of course, how does his livelihood improve? He now can use a smartphone and go everywhere to interact with the world, and then subscription on his mobile data, of course, needs to be affordable. But so you see that evolution of a person who's able to move and be empowered by that. And of course, then connecting the federal government through the tribal debt department, I think, which is a very good example. Babu mentioned about, yes, we need to move beyond stage one of connectivity and go into some sort of an economic model that is viable. So again, I think it basically repeats what the first speaker was mentioning. And Waqas is saying that besides persistent use of the internet itself as a good measure, is also how they are using the internet itself. In the case of telehealth, that means this is basically improving their lives, and telehealth itself addresses access to health services, but especially for women, where, of course, through technology is always easier. So it's also addressing the quality of the consumption, not just massive bandwidth and the ability to be connected alone. And last but not least, with Kim is, yes, we will eventually need to talk about monetization, which is it needs to be profitable. But again, it's not about being profit-driven per se, but rather the bigger picture is to be sustainable is about well-being, and we need to kind of define that in that respect. So I think I'll leave, unless I'm going to give you maybe a moment here for our panels to, if you'd like to interject or to add from my brief summation, if you like, and then I'll open the floor for the audience. Any comments? No. All right, we'll just go to the floor.
Nuan Vaidanatha from Learn Asia. I'm interested in learning how your business models or sustainable models are adaptive to shocks. Let me try and elaborate through an example. There was a community that we worked with, not necessarily on community networks, agriculture community, and when there was a drought, all the members, they went to the city to find other work, so that the whole entire user base shifted, and there was no income being generated in that local area. So how do shocks like that impact the sustainability? Are there any studies being done? Or I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So in our model, the 4P model, we have actually taken into account users, because the local ISP, the important question that was asked by the local ISP is that if I procure 20 Mbps of bandwidth and I take it to the village, in these villages, in 10 villages, for example, am I ensured that I will be able to use this 20 Mbps of bandwidth in these villages for 1 year and get the amount that I have paid for the 20 Mbps of bandwidth to the telecom operator? So this was a question that was posed by the local ISP to me. So what I told him, I sat with him and I actually went to the villages and I tried to identify 3 different types of users for him. So one was an user that was a sporadic user. So like for example, I go to my villages and I authenticate through my Aadhaar card and then get a bandwidth, I pay and I get a bandwidth for usage of 3 days. Okay. Now there are certain such villages because certain people coming into the village for a day or 2 and going back. That is a sporadic user. Now there is another type of user that the user is a particular user that comes during the festivals. So when most of the people in the village, they go to the city to work. So many of them have migrated. They have their house in these villages. They come back and then they are there during the festival. So then there is a spurt. So there is an increase in the bandwidth at that point of time. And the third one is a returning user. So the user is every month giving the local ISP a particular amount every month. And if the services are good, then the local ISP can charge even more and the user is ready to pay. So we have taken these 3 user bases as 3 scenarios to understand that the local ISP should not be at a crisis in the sense that he should not be like if he is procuring 20 Mbps, at the end of 1 month, nothing is utilized. So he was juggling between these 3 types of users and he procured the 20 Mbps of bandwidth, but he had saved some amount of bandwidth because it was like, if it is Ganesh Chatur, it's a festival season, then he channelizes it into the village. And otherwise, he is just keeping it and he is trying to do some small business in a particular village that is feasible. Like for example, his own village where he has a cable, he has a cyber cafe of his own. So he was using it over there, but other times he was like sort of channelizing it in a proper manner so that he can earn revenues. So this one was there in the business model.
Just a very quick response on this, though we have already said, using internet itself is a business model. Not necessarily that person engaged in so-and-so business and got that much benefit. It's not. Using internet itself is a business model. For example, just around 45 minutes ago, my mom, who is not knowledgeable about English language, she just clicked my photo and then she called me on Viber. And I just had a brief chat with her. So if people are using internet like this for various purposes, then that itself is a business model. It's not necessary to have so-and-so e-commerce activity and so-and-so. It's not like that. Plain use of internet is a business model. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Aiko Akiyama. I'm from a Social Development Division of SCAP, working on disability issues. This is my first time to be in this meeting, so I'm very happy that I'm here, and so I'm still kind of learning what this regional community networks is all about. But if you allow me to share a few thoughts, I'll be happy to do so. And the number one, yes, I feel that inclusivity and then sustainability are really closely interlinked, as all of you already demonstrated through your examples. From my work on promoting disability inclusion, the private sector people such as Tim Cook, who is the CEO of the Apple, says, okay, inclusive product design is already a mainstream part of what you call business. It's not like, okay, we should not forget about all these people. It's not the kind. It is not the process as an afterthought. So I think it's very important for us to think about including concerns of persons with disabilities, women who are impoverished in rural communities when we talk about connectivity. And then when we talk about connectivity, it's not only technical connectivity, but it's also usability and accessibility. So along that line, I also feel, I'm sorry, I really not quite sure about this whole setup of this ISOC, but it will be good for the next occasion. We invite all the stakeholders that we are talking about, and then let's see what's happening at the end of that kind of meeting. Another thing that I think about is like, I know that in EU there is a directive and a law that also mandates barrier-free and accessible ICT products and services if company wants to sell and produce products in the market. So there is a business, or do you call it, law-driven business initiatives already taking place in the EU single market. If we think about the market size, okay, Asia Pacific has a larger market than EU, and then a lot of companies which are from Asia Pacific must be already working in the EU, which is producing accessible ICT products and services. So I'm just raising this as a sort of example of initiative already taking place in terms of no one left behind, but it's not the afterthought, no one left behind. It's a main core part of the business. But that's one way of promoting inclusive ICT. Of course, there should be more local-based activities as well. But anyway, I'm happy to be here, and we like to be in touch with all of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Dr. Salma Abbasi from SAM Foundation. I appreciate your comment very much, and I have 2 points to consider. One is from, I think, Vikas's point yesterday regarding people with disabilities, and I want to share something from the African context, and that is to create inclusive financial inclusion and access to ATMs, which, by the way, are wheelchair unfriendly. They don't have the ledge where you can come close. We've actually created a partnership with banks, competition within banks, who is really creating a accessible, fully accessible bank and ATMs. And this is an interesting way to drive inclusion and competition through private sector, who is going to have the first bank this way. The second is those doors. You can't get a wheelchair in the rotating doors now for security. Even me as a person, I get hit on either side. So we have to just think differently out of the box of what the drivers are. And the second point is to my colleague from India with your case study. I think that was very interesting look at livelihoods. Some examples from India and from Pakistan and Bangladesh show that when you bring in private sector who have a vested interest to the region, to the area, to the village, when I say private sector, I really mean multiple sectors, because we seem to focus on one. But if we keep in our framework the idea of the SDGs, then you can have the medical suppliers, the agriculture suppliers, the artists, the traders, the transportation logistics. This will allow, it's easy to do when you build a needs-based model, because there's always someone who wants to get to the community, and there's always someone who wants to get things out of the community. And that's to the earlier presentation from the colleague from Nepal. He said needs-based. To me, without doing something that's needs-based, it's absolutely pointless without having a need. Even if it's calling your mother on a phone, that's a need. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a question from both two participants from Nepal and India who have given examples of community networks. What is the reaction, or what is the idea from the regulators, respective regulators? Do they interfere? Do they ask your networks to get licenses from him? Or do they just stay away and let the networks develop? Is it a supportive role, or is it restrictive, or I don't care, you're too small anyway?
Yeah. So the TV white space one was through an experimental license that we had applied to DOT, and we had got it only for a year's duration. And after the expiry of that year's duration, we were not allowed to put up our devices, even though we had made advances with the TV white space devices and we have the prototype ready with us. We can't put it up. So we are working on the unlicensed band. 5.8 and 2.4 gigahertz is the unlicensed band. Currently, there are no regulatory compliances that we have to for the community network because now it is only within the domain of enabling connectivity to them and getting their services online. So there is absolutely nothing in between. So that regulatory aspect, we are not facing it currently.
Regulatory interventions were before more than a decade. That Mahavir already mentioned some of incident that he had faced when he early started these things, and later on now. Also, in Nepal, we have rural ISP concept, and the license fee of rural ISP is less than $1, $1 US. I mean, so in that case, we don't have that kind of regulatory problems these days, which was already settled more than a decade ago. Thanks.
If I may add just a little point, I know this question was intended for Nepal, India, but just an example. So this project that we was discussing about, the regulator of Pakistan Telecommunication Authority was actually a support partner in this project. And that helped a lot, especially when we had to get the approval of the permit from the education office, because a federal government entity was part of the project. They actually thought that, they're pretty safe if this project goes on, and there's someone to bank onto from the federation. So it kind of goes back to the same point where you need the whole of the government approach to make maximum use out of the community networks, and this thing actually has been somehow it has been also been linked with what the two ladies were referring to about the persons with disabilities. So enablement or the digital empowerment of the person with disability is actually part of the Digital Pakistan policy, which has been approved last year. And now Internet Society is going to take one more step ahead and going to make the government websites, top 10 government websites, accessible for persons with disabilities in Pakistan. And they're working with the National Information Technology Board, which basically takes care of the government websites. And again, the Ministry of IT and the government entity which deals with these government websites has been helpful and supportive of this project. So I think this is where this probably could be a good example of how the government can come forward and support such initiatives.
I have to just take one last question, so I'll give it to the gentleman, Osama.
Yeah, so I don't know if it is a question, but I just wanted to say that, on one side, I want to make a slightly, dangerous statement is that there is no future of community networks. Because if there will be no community, what will you do of the network? The point is, most of the time, all our economic system and sustainability system is so breaking to the community because they migrate. And the community here that we are trying to address lives in remote areas, whom we are luring with jobs and all that and various kind of opportunity to leave. So unless the network reaches them earlier than the migratory opportunity, there is no future of community networks. That's number one. Number two is that the way we see the internet shutdowns, what will you do of internet if it is shut down? Because ultimately it will be, regulated, it will be seen, it will be censored, and so on and so forth. And therefore community networks actually makes very, very futuristic sense, because if the internet is down, at least you can talk to each other. Because if you make yourself dependent so much on backhaul and internet, that means you are not even going to talk to each other if it is totally censored. So from the, we need to look at this network from the perspective of how we link it to the developmental indices and the requirement of the local community, link it to the services, make it more, less based on technology. Still, the entire community networks looks like that it's a techie's job. It's not a job of the community or job of the barefooters and job of the, layman's people. So it's very, very important that how do we simplify the technology to the level of the EPABX system or the telephone system or a reading writing systems so that they adopt and manage and run on their own. And that is the challenge that, in the last 10 years that ever we started doing with, with the help of ISOC and many other people, the network, what we learned is that while 10, 15 networks that we created, many got shut down, Geo came saying that, $50 a month and I give you all the data. So that first layer of remoteness is over. Now the last level of remoteness is left. Because today when I am accessing internet, I'm actually want to access not internet, just few social media, which is extremely toxic, and with mobile. So, we need to really figure it out that, how do we take community networks, and that's the way we should work on it, to safeguard the community, to take the community networks to the community before anything else goes there. Thanks.
It's not at all a controversial statement. I think that's the right statement. It's really about autonomy, and here is the ability of the community to determine for themselves what is best for them, and of course the continuity of the way of life and the improvement of life. But as a woman, if you will allow me, I would like to allow the lady sitting next to Osama she raised her hands just now, yes, to share her thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think I just wanted to, my name is Ritu, and I had worked with Osama for 8 years in the community networks, and just wanted to give the answer to the gentleman who asked about the regulatory issues in India. In India, the scenario is a very different. It's sometimes it's a no care policy from a government, and sometimes do care policy from the government. There are some positive indices, and there are some negative indices at the same time. There's sometimes that a regulator has noticed that community networks are a viable and a sustainable models to connect the last mile, but at the same time, because of telecom lobbies is so high that we are not seen as a viable model at the same time. But these models are also referred by the various other people like Railtel or any other people. Those who are trying to connect those models are also there. One of the examples that we do have a MVNO, Mobile Virtual Network Operating System, which allows us to reach out to get the license in a low bandwidth and to reach out to the unconnected regions actually. So still, as per the regulatory framework, we have to go far away in India. There are some of the things that the TV wide spectrum or the another spectrum bands are still not de-licensed, and these are going into the built telcos and operator sections actually.
Thank you very much. It's a very policy recommendation there, which is very good. I think I'm going to give the opportunity now to each of our panelists to give me the final words, a key message that you'd like to leave for our audience here, something that they can take home and hopefully implement it. I'll start with our lady at the very end.
According to me, community networks should be the work of the community. It should be by the community for the community. We can make some interventions, technology interventions, but eventually it has to be by the community for the community. Like in the sense that they have to, their needs should be addressed, and that connectivity should be a connectivity that can enable their lives. That can empower their lives. So that is something that I would like to say.
if we can build some aggregated use of internet in community, then only we can make that community network successful. Just bringing access is not sufficient. So we have to think about after access as well. Thank you.
I think we probably need some more outreach about these community networks to, especially to the government circles, because we just don't need access. People need affordable devices to connect to the network. People need content. People need a safe and secure internet. Many of these things actually fall in the domain of the government about how they allow these community networks. Maybe a tax-free community network would do. So I think unless we have more outreach and we involve the government into this process more, I think this could be a good thought.
Local innovation at the community level, fostered by the community network, can be interlinked to and the further promote the socio-economic development and innovation at the national level and the global level as well. In this regard, it is important to keep in mind that the effort with the community network at the local level is an essential stepping stone for achieving the global and the universal SDG goals and targets. Thank you.
I think with that, I'd like to express my appreciation personally as your moderator for, I think you are a very impressive panel, and not because I am a moderator here, but extremely enlightened panelists. And I think all of us have the benefit of learning from their experiences, and I think they're all hands-on experts here. And of course, please do approach them personally if you have any further questions. And with that, I'd like to also express my thanks to Rajneesh and Naveed and the ISOC, the Internet Society, for allowing me here to be here as part of this important meeting, and also to the ASCAP team, the ICT DRR team, who's been strongly promoting these initiatives on the ground. And lastly, I'd like to also express my thanks to all of the audience here for staying late after the time that we've been allocated. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our speakers. So now we shall ask you to accomplish a survey once more. Our survey is so this is the topic, so community networks. So can it offer more than just connectivity, acting as community sustainable development networks, empowering communities?